Picture 30 people crowded into the black throat of a cave. It's tens of thousands of years before the first written word. There's no temple, no priest, no holy book, no church, no altar, no bell. In fact, there isn't even a word yet for the thing they're doing, and yet somewhere in that darkness by the light of a single torch, one of them is leading the others in something that looks unmistakably like worship. So how did ancient humans worship their gods? Seriously, sit with that for a second. Because before you can worship a god, you have to invent one, and nobody handed these people a religion. They built it themselves from nothing in the dark. This goes back further than you think. Older than farming, older than the wheel, older than writing, older than cities, older than the first scratch of a plow into soil. We're talking about a habit so ancient it predates civilization itself. And here's the strange part. When archaeologists went looking for the very beginning of it, they found something that broke the timeline, something that shouldn't have existed yet. And the last piece of this might change how you see the inside of your own head. To understand any of it, you have to picture the world these people lived in. No electric light. When the sun went down, the dark was total, a black so complete you couldn't see your own hand, and into that dark came sounds you couldn't explain. Thunder with no cause, disease with no name, a loved one who was warm and breathing yesterday, and cold and still today, and no one on earth could tell you where they'd gone. That's the world worship was born into, a world of enormous, terrifying questions and absolutely no answers. And then, somewhere, something changed. People started giving answers back. Here's the first one, and it's the oldest hard evidence we've got. In a cave in southern Germany called Hohlenstein-Stadel, someone sat down with the tusk of a mammoth and a stone blade and carved a figure. It's about a foot tall. It has the body of a human, standing upright, arms at its sides, and the head of a cave lion. We call it the Lion Man. And using radiocarbon dating, researchers have placed it at around 40,000 years old. Now think about what that actually means. This isn't a carving of an animal someone hunted. It's not a person. It's a creature that has never existed anywhere on Earth. Somebody had to imagine it first. A being that was part human, part predator, something more than either. That is the single hardest thing a mind can do. Movies love to show you the grunting, dim-witted caveman. This is the opposite. 40,000 years ago, a human being carved a god out of a tusk. The archaeologist Nicholas Connard, who's worked on these figures, thinks it points to something like early shamanism, a belief in a world beyond the visible one. You're telling me people that ancient had gods? Yes. Yes, they did. And the Lion Man might be the oldest one whose face we can still see. But a statue is a thing. Worship is an act, so here's where it gets stranger. What were they doing with these gods? For that, we go to the walls. Deep inside caves across Europe, Chauvet in France, dated to around 30,000 years or more, and later Lascaux. People crawled sometimes hundreds of meters into pitch darkness, into passages barely wide enough for a body, and they painted. Horses, lions, bison, rhinos charging across the stone. And here's the detail most people miss. These paintings aren't near the entrance where you'd live. They're buried in the deepest, most inaccessible, most useless parts of the cave. Places you would only go on purpose. Places that feel, for lack of a better word, like sanctuaries. And scattered among the animals, you find them. Therianthropes. That's the technical word for a human-animal hybrid. At the bottom of a 5-meter shaft in Lascaux, too narrow for more than one person, there's a scene of a man with the head of a bird next to a wounded bison. At another French cave, Trois Frères, there's a famous figure called the sorcerer, part stag, part owl, part human, staring down at whoever enters. Why would you paint a half-animal spirit at the bottom of a pit where almost no one could see it? Because it probably wasn't meant to be seen. It was meant to be done. The painting was the ritual. Now, a note of honesty, because this is where good science earns your trust. We don't actually know exactly what these people believed. Nobody left an instruction manual. Anthropologists lean on one big clue. They look at hunter-gatherer societies that survived into modern times, and in a striking number of them, you find shamans. People who enter a trance to travel to a spirit world and come back. The bird-headed man in the pit at Lascaux looks an awful lot like a shaman in trance. It's the best explanation we have. It is not a certainty, and a good storyteller should tell you which is which. There's another piece, though, and it's quieter, but in some ways it hits harder. Because worship isn't only about gods up there, it's also about the dead. Long before the cave paintings, people were burying their dead on purpose. In Kafse Cave in what's now Israel, modern humans were laid in the ground with grave goods. Red ochre, a rich blood-red pigment, sprinkled over the body, along with tools and bones. Think about that. You don't decorate a corpse and give it gifts unless you believe on some level that it still matters, that the person has gone somewhere and might need something when they get there. And it goes back even further into a group that wasn't even our species. In Shanidar Cave in Iraq, Neanderthals appear to have deliberately buried their dead in graves dug into the cave floor at least 65,000 years ago. There's a long-running debate about one of them, the so-called flower burial, where clumps of ancient pollen were found around the body. The original excavator thought flowers had been laid on the grave. Critics pointed out that burrowing bees and rodents can drag pollen underground. That argument is still lived today. But here's what almost nobody disputes anymore. Those bodies were placed there on purpose. Read that again. A different human species, tens of thousands of years before us, was already treating death as something sacred. So we've got imagined gods. We've got ritual in the deep dark. We've got care for the dead. But every one of these was small. A band, a cave, a handful of people. To really worship together at scale, surely you'd need a settled town. Farming, surplus food, and organized society to build a proper temple, right? That's the assumption that just got demolished. And this is the layer I saved for the end, because it's the strangest part of all of it. In southeastern Turkey, there's a hill called Göbekli Tepe. In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt started digging there. And what he pulled out of the ground rewrote the textbook. Enormous T-shaped limestone pillars, some more than 5 meters tall, weighing up to 10 tons and more, arranged in great stone rings, carved in relief with foxes and snakes and vultures. A monument. Radiocarbon dating puts the oldest parts at around 9,600 BC. That's roughly 11,500 years ago, 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the pyramids. And now the part that should stop you cold. The people who built it were hunter-gatherers. No pottery, no metal tools, no farming, no town. Nomads, hauling 50-ton stones across a hillside with nothing but muscle and stone tools to build the oldest known temple on Earth, before they had any of the things we thought you needed to build one. Schmidt's conclusion turned history on its head. For a century, we assumed the sequence went, first people farm, then they settle down, then they get rich enough to build temples and invent religion. Göbekli Tepe says it may have happened the other way around. His famous line was, first came the temple, then the city. The urge to gather and worship might not be a luxury civilization produced. It might be the very thing that pulled us together and built civilization in the first place. We didn't get religion because we settled down. We may have settled down because of religion. So, how did ancient humans worship their gods? They carved them out of mammoth ivory 40,000 years ago. They painted spirits on the walls of caves so deep and so dark you could only reach them by crawling. They laid their dead in the earth with red ochre and gifts, betting everything on a world we still can't see. And then, before they had farms or writing or towns, 30,000 years later, they dragged mountains of stone up a hill in Turkey and built the first temple on Earth. No priests told them to. No book instructed them. They invented all of it, from nothing in the dark. And that's the thing to carry with you. Worship isn't something that arrived late, once we were comfortable and civilized. It was there at the very beginning, before almost everything else we call human. It may have been the beginning. So go back to those 30 people in the black throat of the cave, one torch burning, staring at a painted spirit on the wall. No temple, no priest, no holy book. They'd already invented the thing we've never stopped doing since. Next time you step into a church, a mosque, a temple, or just look up at the dark and wonder if anyone's listening, you're doing something older than farming, older than writing, older than the wheel. You're doing the first human thing.